Hello, spooky friends. It's your Something Scary podcast hostess, Blair Bathory, and I'm here with
Steffany Strange, our YouTube video hostess.
And we're here together in the studio for the first time since we have taken over the Something Scary brand and been with you, telling you scary stories. So we thought it was a fun moment to just come on and say hi. And we also have a brand new podcast for you, Feast of Fear. And we also have a special treat coming from Steffany and Pete Monzingo very soon. But if I don't see you before next week, happy Thanksgiving. And until next time, sweet screams. ZocDoc is a free app where you can find amazing doctors and book appointments online. Book an appointment with a few taps in their app and start feeling better, faster with ZocDoc. It really couldn't be easier. I use ZocDoc, and you should too. Go to ZocDoc.com/something and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/something, ZocDoc.com/something.
Hi, I'm Steffany Strange. Want to hear something scary? Hey, my sweet strangerlings. We're heading into the holidays, and we thought you'd enjoy some nostalgia from Something Scary for the next few weeks. Longtime viewers may remember these compilations that we used to do, so we are excited to bring them back. Hope you enjoy.
The holidays were always a big deal in the Escobar household because it was a time for festive feasts. Giselle and her younger brother Paulo gorged themselves on all the food their grandmother made, despite the story she told about La Pisadera, who would visit them if they fell asleep with their bellies too full. Their grandmother claimed the hag punished gluttons by crawling on their chests at night and feeding off their fear, all while they helplessly watched half awake. Giselle knew their grandmother only told them stories like that to scare them, but as she watched, her skinny younger brother scarfed down a third helping. She couldn't figure out how he could eat so much and still look so frail. "You okay?" Giselle asked. Paulo shrugged. "I'm just tired and very hungry. I had nightmares again last night." That night, in their room, Paulo fell asleep in his bed almost as soon as the lights went out, but Giselle couldn't sleep. She was worried about her too skinny brother and his too big appetite. As she stared at the ceiling, she suddenly heard someone moving through the house. It sounded too slow and deliberate to be one of her relatives. With a slow creak, she heard their bedroom door open. The hairs on her neck stood up, and she felt something coming closer. From the corner of her eye, she saw clawed fingers reaching out. A voice laughed softly, and then someone quickly jumped over Giselle. "Paulo!" Giselle gasped when she saw the figure climb on top of her brother. It was a long, slender, haggard, demonic-looking woman with filthy claws. It bent in contortions to perch on Paulo's chest. "Paulo! Move!" Giselle shouted. And with that, the demon turned to her with a jagged smile. It was La Pisadera. Giselle jumped out of bed and pulled on her brother, but La Pisadera pushed her to the floor. The girl landed on her back, and the hag was on her in an instant. Giselle's body became numb. All she could do was watch in paralyzed horror as claws dug into her chest. La Pisadera moved its wretched face close to Giselle's. As Giselle's terror grew, the creature's milky yellow eyes glowed brighter. Eventually, La Pisadera left their room, and the two siblings slowly fell back into an unrestful sleep. The next morning, Giselle asked Paulo if he remembered what happened that night. He shook his head while he kept on eating more and more cereal. Giselle was exhausted and very hungry too, as she poured herself another bowl of cereal. "Something is wrong," their grandmother said as she brought them juice. Giselle looked at her brother and they both began to cry. "We ate too much last night," Giselle explained. "La Pisadera came, just like you said." Their grandmother snatched their food away and sent them to their room. "No more for you today," she said. That night at dinner, Giselle and Paolo were surprised to see the neighbor's kid, Alejandro, at the dinner table. Their grandmother told him he would be staying the night with him. Giselle and Paolo watched as their grandmother filled Alejandro's plate and only gave them half portions. They were so hungry, and watching Alejandro feast was agony. The siblings both asked for more food, but their grandmother ignored them as she offered the neighbor his second dessert. That night, both Giselle and Paolo stared at the ceiling of their room, unable to sleep from being so hungry. Meanwhile, Alejandro slept on a cot, snoring happily. Eventually, they heard the laugh of La Pisadera as she crept into their room. The hag leapt onto Giselle's chest and once more tried to feast on the girl's fear. After a moment, it hissed its disappointment and jumped onto Paolo, but found no sustenance. It sniffed the air and smiled as its eyes landed on the snoring Alejandro. Soon, the neighbor was half awake and paralyzed as the demon hag fed. That morning, a very tired and hungry Alejandro left their home complaining of nightmares. As their grandmother prepared them a sensible breakfast, Giselle and Paolo had many questions for her. She explained that an all-encompassing evil like La Pisadera cannot truly be defeated, only passed on to someone else. Those that overindulged before sleep were in fact ringing the dinner bell for the evil entity. And now that they knew the truth of it, to always be wary of gorging themselves on food, especially if you are someone else's guest. Elena couldn't stop thinking about the 13-foot skeleton her family bought last Halloween. 12-foot skeletons were all the rage at the big box stores, but the local mom-and-pop hardware store, King's Things, had to outdo them by making their own one-of-a-kind version of the articulated plastic skeleton with light-up eyes. It was better, they claimed, by one whole foot. It was crudely made compared to the originals, but that made it even creepier. The plastic was dull yellow and filled with cracks. The battery-operated eyes flickered off and on. It looked terrible and sinister, which made it perfect for the holiday. Elena's family went all out with the decorations in the front yard and made the 13-foot skeleton their centerpiece. The whole neighborhood loved it, making Halloween a huge hit for everyone, except Elena. She couldn't shake the feeling of uneasiness the thing gave her and was looking forward to Halloween being over. That is, until her family decided to keep the skeleton around for Thanksgiving. Her older sister was the one that suggested that they keep it, and her parents were delighted. Soon, the neighborhood was too, as the creepy skeleton now held a plastic cornucopia filled with a stuffed turkey. After that, it was inevitable that the skeleton would stick around once the Christmas decorations came out as well. The weird part was, it almost seemed like the skeleton was thriving from all the attention. The cracked plastic bones seemed smoother and wider in the glow of the stringed lights wrapped around them. The once flickering eye lights now beamed bright and steady. Her dad even sewed together a giant Santa hat for it to wear. It was a jolly nightmare. Elena couldn't recall a time over the last couple of months when there wasn't someone out front marveling at the thing she'd come to loathe. Even worse, every day someone was changing the position of the skeleton. She was surprised that her parents or sister would go to all that trouble, but no one would own up to it. They even accused her of being the one moving it. Finally, New Year's passed, and Elena volunteered to take down all the Christmas decorations. She couldn't wait to fold up that monstrosity into the garage. As she tried to bend the skeleton's articulated joints, however, they wouldn't budge. It stared at her with its dead light-up eyes and clenched plastic jaw. Elena felt queasy, No matter her position, it never seemed to take its eyes off her. It was almost as if it didn't want to be put away, but she refused to give up and finally stored it in the corner of the garage. As the garage door closed, she finally felt a sense of relief. What Elena didn't consider was that coming home from school, she'd enter through the garage into the house. Each time she saw it, the thing appeared to be slowly coming out of its fetal position. She swore its eyes flickered once, despite having its batteries removed. She finally confronted her family about pranking her, but they all denied it. Her sister loudly said how she was over it anyway, and that they should probably throw the huge thing out. One night, Elena got home late, and as she entered the side door of the garage, she noticed the skeleton was gone. Elated to be rid of it, she skipped inside. There, sitting on the couch, was that giant skeleton. Elena began calling for her sister and parents. These pranks were no longer funny, but she couldn't find anyone else at home. When she returned to the living room, the skeleton was turned towards her, its eyes flickering. Elena had had enough and yelled out, "Stop doing this to me. It's not." Suddenly, the 13-foot skeleton stood up on its own. The lights in its eyes turned bright red. It grabbed at Elena. Its plastic bony fingers cut deep into her arm as she yanked away from it. Terrified, she ran down the hallway towards the front door. Following close behind, the skeleton chased her on all fours, ducking its massive frame into the lower ceiling hallway. Its body screeched against the narrow walls as Elena made it outside. Horror filled her as she saw the bodies of her family, broken and grotesquely positioned in the yard like decorations. As she screamed, stringed lights lit all around them, putting the grisly scene on full display for the neighborhood. Just then, a bony hand grabbed Elena's ankle, dragging her back into the house. The months of adulation and awe from the neighborhood had empowered the monstrous thing, and now it craved more. As decorations tightened around her, a broken plastic voice said,
"Don't worry, we'll be joining them soon enough."
Jessica danced around the field at her uncle's chicken farm. She hummed a happy tune, adding a whistle here and there. She and her family had made their trip to El Salvador to visit relatives for the Thanksgiving holiday. Her Theo's farm was nothing like what Jessica was used to in New Jersey. She kept whistling as she lay in the field, looking up at the sky and wiggling her bare feet. Suddenly, she stopped. She swore she heard a whistle back. She sat up and looked around, expecting to see someone or something capable of making the noise. But there was nothing except the chicken coop in sight. She knew the chickens were definitely not making the noise. Her heartbeat quickened. She slowly looked around the field, eyes darting side to side. It seemed she was alone, so she drew a deep breath and then whistled again. As she heard a whistle response, her eyes widened and she jumped up and ran towards the house, leaving her boots behind. The distance felt like eternity. Her bare feet were torn up by twigs and rocks, but she didn't dare to stop. With the house in sight, she noticed someone waiting on the front porch. Safety, she thought, feeling so relieved. The woman from the front porch rushed over to help her. Jessica collapsed in her arms and tears ran down her cheeks. She was too worked up to wonder who the woman was. Thank you, Jessica cried. But when she looked up into her lifesaver's face, she couldn't mask her repulsion. The woman had no eyes, and cloudy white balls filled the sockets. Her face was gaunt and lined with wrinkles. Her lips and eye sockets were tinged with black, appearing as they were rotting. At that moment, Jessica fell into her Theo's arms, but not before she smelled the stench emitting from the woman's mouth. He shouted at her to leave his property as he carried Jessica inside. As her mom bathed her feet, she told her familia what happened. Her Theo took out his shotgun and closed up all the windows to the house. He told them he believed that Jessica had summoned La Lechuza. He explained this was an ordinary woman who had sold her soul to the devil to become a bruja, a witch with mystical powers. She could shapeshift between her human form and an owl looking for her next prey. If she whistled and you whistled back, well, he didn't need to finish his sentence. Jessica's parents chimed in, telling them it was all a ridiculous, tall tale. No one had anything to worry about, and they all just needed to just get some sleep. The night was still and quiet. Jessica lay in her sleeping bag on the guest room floor. She was still nervous from before and purposely kept her breathing low and quiet, and then she heard it. The whistle grew louder and louder as she crawled to the window, her feet still too tender to walk on. Peering outside, she saw a massive, gnarly-looking owl hovering outside the window. It whistled. Jessica threw her hands over her mouth, knowing she must not whistle back. The sound of a shotgun spooked them both. A bird dropped to the ground. Then, with an obvious injury to its left wing, it flew off into the woods. When Jessica looked down, she saw her Theo standing outside with the shotgun. Next to him stood her father. She shook as she listened to them bicker. Her father asked, "Why? Why didn't you just kill the darn thing?" But her Theo said, "You can't kill La Lechuza with a gun." Her father gave a hearty laugh. He didn't really believe in those urban legends, did he? Her Theo's stern expression said it all. He informed her father that whoever tried to kill it with a gun would mysteriously die themselves. Then, with nothing further to say on the matter, the two men went back to their home. The following morning seemed to wash away all the terror from the night before. The smell of Thanksgiving feast filled the house. Jessica was sitting at the table when she noticed the strange old woman from yesterday standing at the front door. Jessica called out for anyone, but her mother was busy cooking and her father and Theo were at the coop. Through the window, the old woman still looked disheveled and creepy, but Jessica reasoned that the woman had helped her the day before. She opened the front door, but before she could ask what the woman wanted, Jessica noticed blood seeping through her shirt and on the left shoulder, the same as the left wing of the owl her Theo had injured. Jessica gasped and tried to slam the door, but it was too late. Jessica's mother screamed. A few minutes later, the men arrived at the house. She told them she came in from the kitchen to find the front door open, a short trail of blood on the porch, and no sign of Jessica at all. Her Theo shook his head in despair as Jessica's parents wept. To this day, the legend of La Lechuza lives on, daring no one to whistle in happiness.
During Thanksgiving, we all have extra turkey left over, and typically it's great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break bad habits. We're not talking about some weird mind voodoo from your crazy neighbor or your mother that stays a little too long during the holidays. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong, so instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does just that. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of being bad, Fume is here to help you. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. And I recently tried it, and it's really cute. It's very convenient. You can fit it in your pocket or your backpack, and it actually does taste really good. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code SCARY to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code SCARY to save an additional 10% off your order today. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So during the holidays, I get really anxious because I deal with a lot, and it helps to talk with somebody, but usually it can't be with my friends and family because I'm having issues with them most of the time. It turns out one great way to get out of negative thought cycles is to talk with a professional. Therapy gives you a place to do that, so you can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace, which I really need during Christmas time. Therapy helps you stay connected with what you really want while you navigate life, so you can make decisions and move forward with confidence. If you're looking for therapy, give BetterHelp a try. And it's so easy to get started with BetterHelp. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/scary and get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/scary.
Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.